Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Arise with Sally Goodwin. I almost didn't make it on time. I think it's just on 7 o'clock. Let me just scoot around a little bit here, get myself a little bit more comfortable. I suddenly realized what the time was and sort of came racing through to quickly jump on. It was just, I think it was 6:59, so I'm sure that I just made it on time. But good morning, everybody. Welcome to Arise with Sally Goodwin on this beautiful Tuesday morning. And I'm already hot. I don't know about you, but I'm already hot. Good morning, beautiful Bertha. Lovely to see you again. I feel like I haven't seen you in ages. It's lovely to see you again. I feel like I'm very kind of fluffy and everything because I've been rushing a little bit, but you have to take me as you see me. That's kind of the way it is at 7 o'clock in the morning. So it is the 1st of February 2022, which is exciting. January seems to have disappeared into the mists of time. And it is also at sunset this evening, we move into the month of Adar. And that's what I'm going to be speaking to you about this morning, is the month of Adar. Good morning, Ashles. Oh, it's lovely to see you. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Ashley says that I look better than she does at 7 in the morning, but as she's a lot younger than me, I think that probably is an untruth. But thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Okay, so we are going to be moving into the month of Adar. Now, that is very exciting for two reasons. Firstly, because, good morning, Stu, lovely to see you. Firstly, because Adar is the 12th month of the biblical calendar and the 6th month of the civil calendar. So we have Adar, and then after Adar comes Nisan, and Nisan is the first month of the biblical calendar, but the 7th month of the civil calendar. So remembering all of those things, I know, is a little bit taxing, but you don't have to pay more attention to it than God encourages you to. So the difference this year, so we are in the Hebrew year 5782, and obviously in the Gregorian year 2022. And the difference that occurs in this Hebrew year 5782, which corresponds with our Gregorian year, is that it is a Jewish leap year. Now, because the Jewish people operate from a lunar calendar, not a solar calendar, so they use the moon instead of the sun, they land up having not enough days. And then because also some of their feasts, their Jewish feasts and festivals, God specifically told them to have the feast or festival at a specific time of year. So for example, in Exodus 12, God commanded the Jews that to celebrate Passover in spring. So in order to make sure that their feasts and festivals fit in with the timings that God commanded in the Old Testament, they have incorporated a leap year. So in a 19-year cycle, they have 7 leap years. But whereas in the Gregorian calendar, good morning, Martha, lovely to see you. Oh, by the way, let me just interrupt myself to digress. As most of you know, I preached at Heaven and Earth Church in Hermanus on Sunday. It was an absolutely incredible morning because the people there are just on fire for Jesus. They're amazing. And the word that I preached is on my Rise with Sally Goodwin page. I shared it on my Rise with Sally Goodwin page, and it is a word for the church, for the body, and then some of it is specific to Hermanus, and some of it was specific to Heaven and Earth Church prophetically, but it is it's a similar word to the one that I preached at my home church previous Sunday, which hasn't been released yet. So when that is released, you can listen to that as well if you would like to. It speaks about and I think I probably might actually even do one or two teachings on Arise with Sally Goodwin about it, because God has been speaking to me about the new wineskin and the remnant that will rise up out of the church as it is now, to actually move forward prophetically, to pioneer a way forward into the new wineskin. Anyway, let me go back. So I was saying to you, so out of every start again, Sally. Over every 19-year cycle, the Jewish people have 7 leap years. But whereas with us, with the Gregorian calendar, we simply add 1 day to, our leap year just consists of an extra day to balance everything out. The Jewish leap year consists of a whole extra month. So they add a whole extra month into their leap year, and so 7 years out of 19, they celebrate a leap year, which is a whole extra month. And the interesting part of that is that the month that they add is the month of Adar. Now, as I've said to you before, Adar is the 12th month of the biblical calendar. And so they haven't added a new month at the beginning, they've actually added the new month at the end. So effectively, they've made the biblical year 1 month longer, if that makes sense to you. So Adar is the 12th month of the biblical calendar, and as I said before, the 6th month of the civil calendar. And what they literally do is they have Adar 1 and Adar 2. Now, the other slightly complicated thing is that Adar 1 is actually the month that they have added. So they actually add the extra month in ahead of the actual month of Adar. So Adar 1 is the extra month in the year, and Adar 2 is the month that would always have been there. So for example, just to clarify, in Adar, the Jewish people celebrate Purim. They celebrate the Feast of Esther and Purim. So we all know the story of Esther, and we all know what happened and how Haman planned to slaughter all the Jews. And then Esther, in order to reverse the curse that had been spoken out against the Jewish nation, that they were all going to be exterminated. Basically, Esther then asked the king, because the king could not reverse his decree, Esther asked the king if the Jewish people would be allowed to arm themselves and to stand up against people who would want to kill them and actually be able to fight back, which happened. In fact, the Jewish people won that wholly and completely. They gained lots of possessions and things as well. So it is a time when the curse is reversed. That is seen as the reversal of the curse. So the king could not reverse his decree, because a king's decree of that kind could not be reversed. That was part of the politics of the day. But the Jewish people were given an opportunity to actually be able to defend themselves. And of course, because God was with them, they came out the victors. So when we celebrate the Feast of Esther, the Feast of Purim, it's not celebrated in Adar 1, it's actually celebrated in Adar 2. So Adar 2 is the actual month that would have been there, and Adar 1 is the one that is slotted in. Now, I'm sure that all sounds incredibly complicated to all of you, and I hope that I've explained it sufficiently that you understand exactly what it sounds like, what it's supposed to look like. So we are now, until sunset this evening, we are in the month of Shavat. So sunset this evening, the month of Shavat ends, and Adar 1 begins. And Adar 1 begins at sunset this evening, and then it ends at sunset on the 3rd of March 2022, and then Adar 2 begins, and Adar 2 ends at sunset on the 1st of April 2022, and then Nisan begins. And with Nisan, which begins on the sunset on the 1st of April 2022, we begin a new biblical year. Not a new civil year, so we don't go into 5783 yet, but we begin a new biblical year according to the times and seasons that were specified in the Bible. So I want to have a quick look at what Adar means to us, and then I want to have a look at what this leap year actually means to us as the body of Christ. And again, just a reminder to those people who follow me, and to the amazing people who have gone onto my website and listened to my teachings on the Hebrew calendar, and listened to my teachings on the Hebrew alphabet. Just a reminder that God is not bound by any calendar. But if he is going to be bound by a calendar, it's going to be the calendar that he originally originated, which would be the Hebrew calendar. But then as well, we are not Jewish. We are not converting to Judaism. We are not going to be bound by more laws or more religion than we have, than we've already come out of. So the Hebrew calendar, the Hebrew feasts, everything, you need to celebrate and pay attention to those as much or as little as God convicts you to do so. There's no law that we now have to go and celebrate all of these Hebrew feasts. There's no law that we now have to, we are not under that. We do not fall under that law. Jesus fulfilled that law, and we are under the renewed covenant. However, there is a prophetic significance to the calendar that was instituted by God all of those years ago. And it's the prophetic significance that we pay attention to, not the actual physical, well, we have to do this and we have to do that. If you feel led by the Lord to do Shabbat, if you feel led by the Lord to celebrate Passover or Purim or any of those things, that is amazing. But do not let it become a legalistic thing where you are now just exchanging one form of religion for another form of religion, because I've seen that happen to many people, and I don't want that to happen to anybody else. When I speak about these things, I speak as a prophet, and I speak about the prophetic significance for the body of Christ. I'm not encouraging anybody to now go and be bound by the law as the Jewish people were bound by the law before Jesus came. Okay, having said that, we look at Adar. So, as I said, we're going into Adar 1, and it begins at sunset this evening, because the Jewish people follow a lunar calendar, so their days begin at sunset. And if you look back in Genesis, you'll see that God said, there was evening, there was morning the first day. He didn't say there was morning, there was evening the first day. He actually says that there was evening, there was morning, and that was the first day. And so the Jewish people actually stick to that. They believe the day starts at sunset and runs until sunset the next day. Makes sense to me. Adar is an incredible month. As the 12th month of the biblical calendar and the 6th month of the civil calendar, it occupies a very special place in the Hebrew calendar. The word Adar actually means strength. The meaning of the word Adar is strength. Adar is known as the month of joy. And the Jewish people actually have a variety of sayings around the different months. And what they say about Adar is that when Adar begins, joy begins. So it's actually known as the month of joy. And I want you to pay attention to that, because now we're having 2 Adars. So basically everything that we are getting in a double portion. It is a double portion of joy, a double portion of everything that God wants to give. Now, I want to also just remind you that, as I said in my prophetic word for 2022, as a church, as a global church, and as individuals and communities and in all the different ways God works, we are in a season of tearing down, pulling down, uprooting, pulling out, the Jeremiah 1 verse 10. Before God can build and plant, because he needs to destroy, he needs to uproot, he needs to pull down, he needs to tear down the things that we have set up in our lives, in our churches, in our religious spaces as, idolatrous religious structures. And God is in the process of pulling all of that down so that we can move into a season of building and planting. Now, for example, when I preached in Amanus, on Sunday, I got the real sense that Heaven and Earth Church have actually come to the end of that season of their tearing down, pulling out, and they are actually stepping into the season of building and planting. And what I'm saying is that we need to embrace those seasons where God tears down and pulls out and uproots. We need to embrace those seasons. Those seasons are difficult and they are uncomfortable. Believe me, I speak from experience. I know. But growth comes in those seasons. Character is formed in those seasons. Lessons are learned in those seasons that you will never regret learning. And if we fully embrace what God is doing in the pulling down and the tearing down and all of that kind of thing, then and only then will we move into the building and the planting. So what I'm saying is, for those of us as individuals, for those of us as churches, for those of us as communities, or however you identify yourself within the body of Christ, for those of us who have embraced the season of pulling down and tearing down and uproot and destroying, and understand something, we don't like the word destroy, and I've said this before, but I want to say it again for those that haven't heard it before. Destroy, the Hebrew root word for the word destroy, is the pulling down of idolatrous religious structures. That's actually where that word comes from. There's much more to it than just our English word destroy. So if we have embraced that season, then we will be able to move into the season of building and planting. Then we are going to be able to move into the season of double portion. We are going to be able to move into this month of Adar. If we have not embraced that season, and this is a word of warning that God has given me, if we have not embraced that season, then we will have to wait for the next leap year to fully transition into that building and planting season, the season of enlargement. We will have to wait for the next Jewish leap year to do that. That is the word of warning that God gave me, because there are many people who aren't embracing the season because it is difficult. It is difficult. It's unpleasant. It's uncomfortable. It's hard. It hurts. Our hearts hurt. Our souls hurt. We question, we wonder why, we don't understand what God is doing, but it is all necessary so that we can bear even more fruit. I find it amazing, how people always say, they quote that verse from a Song of Songs where it says, the winter time is over and springtime is coming. And yes, we all look forward to springtime. And yes, the Song of Songs presents that in a positive way, but with springtime comes pruning. Nothing gets pruned in winter. With springtime comes pruning. So if you're waiting for winter to end so that springtime can come spiritually, you're waiting in expectation for pruning. But we cannot see it as such a terrible thing. We cannot, the Hebrew root words for singing and for pruning are similar. It actually is while we are pruned, we should be singing praises to the Lord. That's what the Hebrew implies. So that was just a word of warning. And there's still time. There's still time. Remember, God is not bound by calendars. In fact, I met a couple the other day who said to me that God had told them that last year was their Shemitah year, because we're in a Shemitah year. So everything that we feel about this year, we also need to take into account that it's a Shemitah year. Okay. That God had told them that their Shemitah year was actually last year and it has ended and they've already moved in. And sometimes if you carry something on your life, a gifting or an anointing that is pioneering or that God needs to use in a new season for other people, he will shift he can do that because he's God. So it's always good. That's why we have to be as the sons of Issachar and know the times and the seasons that we're in. So this is Adar. So we're moving into Adar at sunset this evening. Adar means strength, and it is known as the month of joy. Adar is also the month of Naftali. And Naftali, as we know, was one of Jacob's sons. He was one of the 12 tribes of Israel, was Naftali. And we have basically 2 months of Naftali coming up, double portion. And it is, as the month of Naftali, it is a time for celebration that your curse is overturned. And I want to, so in Genesis 49 verse 21, when Jacob blesses his sons, he says that Naftali is a hind let loose which yields lovely fawns, and which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to anybody. But if you read in the Jewish translation, it says Naftali is a deer let loose. He gives words of elegance. And another Jewish translation says beautiful words. He bears beautiful words. So in this decade of Pei, where we're so conscious of the words that are coming out of our mouth, these months of Adar, these months of joy, these months of celebration are going to be the release of beautiful words. We are going to speak beautiful words over others, and others are going to speak beautiful words over us. And remember that beautiful words are not always easy ones. Beautiful words are words that bring light and truth. They're not words that tickle our ears and make us feel better about ourselves. Then in Deuteronomy 33, verse 23, when Moses prophesied over the 12 tribes of Israel, he says, of Naftali, he said, O Naftali, satisfied with favor and full of the blessing of the Lord, possess the Sea of Galilee and its warm, sunny climate like the south. That was the words that Moses spoke over Naftali. Possess the Sea of Galilee and its warm, sunny climate of the south. And he says, satisfied with favor and full of the blessing of the Lord. But when Naftali was given his portion of land, the portion of land that he was given was swamp. And it couldn't be used. It was unusable. It was swampland. So you could have thought that the tribe of Naftali could have thought, okay, well, that was rubbish. You know, that word was rubbish. Satisfied with favor and full of the blessing of the Lord and possessing the Sea of Galilee and all of that kind of thing. And as well, Naphtali's first portion of land that he was given, or the portion of land that he was given, was landlocked, if I remember correctly. However, when the Jewish people returned to Palestine, they drained the swamp, and they extended the usable pieces of land that were in Naphtali's portion, and it was thriving by 1940 and included the sea. So it was when Moses spoke those promises over Naftali all of those years ago, the portion of land that Naftali was allocated looked nothing like God had promised. Nothing. And it took years, centuries later, when the Jewish people returned to Palestine, they drained the swamp, and then the word over Naftali, the word over the tribe, the word over the land actually came into fulfillment, because their land was then satisfied with favor and full of blessing, and it encompassed the sea and the sunny climate like the south. That is where we remember, time and time again, to hold on to the promises of God, as long as we're sure that they're promises from God and not ones that we've just, thought are God, because they will come to pass. But that word didn't come to pass in Naphtali's lifetime. And in fact, in Naphtali's sons or his children's children, the ones that had come out of the desert into the promised land, none of them saw that promise come true, but it did come true though. And we rush God, we want it now. We get a word and we think, okay, how do I fit that word into my current circumstances? We forget to ask God about timing, and timing is imperative, because if you move in the promises of God but outside of his timing, it's going to end badly. It has to be, the timing has to be correct. Okay. So the constellation, the star sign, the astrological sign that governs or is over the month of Adar is Pisces, the fish. So we have Pisces over the month of Adar. And the fish, Pisces the fish, and remember again, we are not doing horoscopes or things like that, but God made the star signs. He put them in the sky for a reason, to speak to the people who didn't have clocks and calendars and things as we have today. And they used those signs in the sky to guide them and to hear the will of God. So Pisces, as the fish, speaks about supply and multiplication. If you look at the stories in the Bible in the New Testament that involve fish, you look at the money in the fish's mouth that was there to pay the taxes. You look at the multiplication of the loaves and the fish. You look at the disciples throwing their nets to the other side of the boat and catching huge amounts of fish. Fish spoke of supply and multiplication. It spoke, especially to the Jewish people, it spoke of food on the table. It spoke of provision. It spoke of productivity, all of those kinds of things. That is what fish represented to them. And when we move into the month of Adar and we see the star sign Pisces, we know that God is speaking of supply and multiplication, that God is speaking of being able to meet not just your needs, but your wants, that God is speaking of bringing an abundance, that he is speaking of multiplying your supply. Now we have to look at all of that in reference to a Shemitah year. So we're very conservative in a Shemitah year because, with money, I've said to everybody before, be conservative with your money until the Shemitah year is over. Be wise, be wise, be wise, be wise. However, in the month of Naftali, there is a definite emphasis on supply and multiplication. Good morning, Arena. Lovely to see you. So, and I find that so relevant in terms of the fact that many businesses have their financial year ends at the end of February. And so within the month of Naftali, within the month of Adar, within this month of supply and multiplication, we cross over as businesses, we cross over from one financial year into the next financial year. And the words that God always gives me are this: as you cross over, if you are a business owner, or you are in any way responsible for a business or accountable for a business, as you cross over from the old financial year into the new financial year, make sure your house is in order. Right down to make sure your taxes are paid the way they're supposed to be paid. Make sure your house is in order the way it's supposed to be. Make sure your accounts are correct. Make sure that your business, from a financial standpoint, is above reproach. Because as believers, isn't that the way we're supposed to be? It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart when I hear testimonies from people who have been badly burned by dealing with Christian businesses. Because somehow, as Christian businesses, we feel that the rules don't apply to us, or we don't have to be Christ-like in our business and in our life. No, if you are an employee, if you're a business owner, and you're someone who burns for Jesus, your Christ-like behavior has to be shown through everything that you do. Your spirit of generosity, God's spirit of generosity, has to be demonstrated through everything that you do. So it is the time to get your house in order. If you want to cross over and receive, because basically what you're going to be doing is, in this leap year, is you're going to be crossing over in your financial year. You're going to cross over from one month of Adar into the next month of Adar. So we have a double portion here. We have 2 months of Adar. We have 2 months of joy. We have 2 months of strength. We have 2 months of supply and multiplication. We have 2 months where the curse is redeemed, where the curse is reversed. 2 months of that. But in order to receive all of that, we have to make sure that we have embraced the season of tearing down, pulling out, destroying, that we've let go of the things God has told us to let go of, that we have ended the things God has told us to end, that we have taken on board the things that God has told us to do better or be better or grow in different areas, that our house is in order, our businesses, our families, our structures, as individuals, that our houses are in order so that we can cross over. And because this is a double portion year and we have these 2 months of Adar, we have more time. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh my word, but I didn't know any of this, and so I haven't done any of this, and I've been resisting the season of tearing down and pulling out, and I've been resisting God trying to move me out of something and into something new, and I've been resisting the new and all of that, if that's okay. There is time. There is always time. But let us make sure that we get our houses in order, and also that we celebrate the ending of things. You know, sometimes there are some endings that occur in our lives that we know something has to end in order for something better to begin. Okay, so we know that. However, we sometimes there are endings that we need to grieve. Sometimes there are endings that we get to celebrate, but we need to make sure that we grieve or celebrate the ending before we move ahead into the beginning. There's something new, let's go there, let's not. You need time, give your heart time to grieve an ending, to celebrate an ending if it's to be celebrated, and before you move ahead to the new beginning. So in the next month of Adar, we will look at the Feast of Esther and Purim and all of that, because that will only be celebrated in the next month of Adar. It's not celebrated in Adar 1, it's only celebrated in Adar 2. The letter of the Hebrew alphabet that is associated with the month of Adar is Kaf. And Kaf, the letter of the alphabet, Kaf, it carries connotations or symbolism of removing the mask or masquerade and entering joy. In other words, sometimes the thing that stops us from entering fully into joy is the mask that we wear in front of other people. The mask that we wear, some of us wear masks in front of ourselves because we don't want to face everything that's in there. You know, some of us wear masks of protection. You know, some of us are too scared to allow anybody to see the person behind the mask because we're afraid that that person won't be loved or isn't lovable. But in order to enter fully into this double portion of joy and strength and supply and multiplication that God has got for us here, we need to take off the masks. We need to be authentic. We need to be truthful. We need to be vulnerable, even if it hurts. Because how are we going to teach the world to be authentic and truthful and vulnerable if we can't be? How do we say that we are being more like Jesus or being more Christ-like if we cannot be authentic and vulnerable and truthful? Truth is an underrated commodity in the world today. You listen to things, you know, media and this and that and the next thing, and no one knows what the truth actually is. But God knows the truth. God knows the truth. And we need to be able to speak it, and we need to be able to receive it. Because truth is difficult a lot of the time. And we need to be able to speak it out, but we also need to be able to receive it. Okay, so this year that we are in, this Hebrew leap year, where Adar I is added before Adar II, the Jewish people refer to their Hebrew leap years as pregnant years. They call them pregnant years. Pregnant with promise, pregnant with joy, pregnant with strength, pregnant with supply and multiplication. And they speak as well of an enlarged year. Now this excites me because, as you all know, Isaiah 54 is my life chapter. And in Isaiah 54, God speaks about enlarging your territory, enlarging your place of influence. And as I've said before, it's not a verse to use to back up your desire for a bigger or a better church building. That is the wrong context for that verse. But the correct context is enlarging your territory in your spiritual footprint that we can do as individuals and as groups or communities, whatever, but we want to increase our spiritual footprint. We want to enlarge our spiritual territory. We want to reclaim territory that has been given back to the enemy. We want to take that back and we want to increase. So there is an enlarging, and so the Jewish people speak of a pregnant year. They speak of an enlarging year. Now, I want to just bring with that a word of caution, because what happens when one is pregnant? What happens when something is enlarged? We get stretched. When you are pregnant, your whole body stretches. Your organs all have to make room for this baby that is growing inside of you. You stretch more than you think it's ever possible to stretch as a human being. And when God talks about stretching out your tent pegs, enlarging your territory and stretching out your tent pegs, a year of pregnancy, a pregnant year, an enlarged year is exciting. It is filled with promise. But before the promise comes the stretching. Okay, Adar is also known as the month of transformation. In terms of the way that the Jewish people, in the story of Esther, the curse was reversed. The Jewish people got to stand up for themselves, and their whole standing within Persia, within that community, changed. Mordecai was made head of the king's affairs. You know, the Jewish people, their standing in the community, their standing had always been less than, you know, their whole standing in the community changed. Their lives were transformed by the sacrifices that Esther made. And by the bravery and the courage that she showed, their lives were transformed. So it is also a month of transformation. And actually, as the 6th month in the civil year, the number 6, and we often say, you know, 6 is the number of man, etc., etc., and that's true in some instances, but 6 is also the number of transformation. Because what is man? Man transforms when he meets Jesus. So it's a number of transformation. So Adar is a month of transformation. There is the power of transformation that flows through the month of Adar. And now we have 2 of those, 2 Adars. So we have 2 months of transformation, a double portion of transformation. And transformation isn't also not easy. It's something we get excited about and something we look forward to, but the journey itself is not always easy. The next Hebrew year is 5784. The next Hebrew leap year is 5784. So if for some reason you have resisted God's attempts to stretch you, to enlarge you, to pull out the stuff you don't need, to tear down and root out and do all of those things, and you haven't been quite willing to embrace that and step fully into that, then you will get the opportunity once again to step into the promises of God. It's not like there'll be no promises of God for you for the next 2 years. Please don't hear what I'm not saying, okay? God's promises, and God operates outside of the calendar, etc., etc. And I think this is more a warning actually for groups. It's more a warning for church communities or that sort of thing, who don't want to embrace the season that God has them in, that their next opportunity will come in 5784. And that's, I feel as though I get a sense that that's more a warning for groups of people rather than us as individuals, because we can at any moment in time choose to surrender to what God is doing, and then he will move everything around to make it work for us, because he's God, and that's what he does. So that is the promise, or this is the promise of Adar. This is the promise of this Hebrew leap year. This is the promise of joy, of strength, of a curse being reversed, or a curse being redeemed. It is a promise of supply and multiplication. It is a promise of pregnancy and enlargement, and with that comes all the things that go with that. There is a promise of stretching and moving and being stretched and enlarged so we can move into the new. And it is a call to get our houses in order, but it is also a call to stand in faith, because all of those stories of the fish in the Bible were miracles. They were miraculous stories. The story of finding the money in the fish's mouth for the tax, the multiplication of the loaves and fishes, the throwing their nets on the other side of the boat. Within those stories are miraculous stories. And maybe we'll have a closer look at those stories while we are in the month of Adar. We can just unpack some of those stories a little bit more and see what God is trying to tell us in this month of Adar. And then remember the promise over Naftali. Remember that God's word was fulfilled. It will always be fulfilled. His word does not return void. As long as it's his word, it will not return void. And then also try and go into this month of Adar and just be your authentic, vulnerable self. If people can't handle you just as your authentic, vulnerable self, then there's a possibility they shouldn't be in your life. You be authentically and vulnerably you, and you will encourage other people to be authentically, vulnerably themselves. Let us become a body of people who speak truth. Not truth that kills people, truth in love. And let us remember that love is not love the way we see it in the world today. All tolerant, all encompassing, that's not love. Love the way Jesus loved. Jesus was a firm believer in tough love. If you look at his conversations with some of the people who wanted to follow him and didn't want to surrender, and if you look at his conversations with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, Jesus was a firm believer in tough love. He loved all of them, absolutely loved all of them, but he believed in tough love. He believed in tough love. So, let us get used to speaking and hearing truth. Speaking truth and hearing and receiving truth, even if it is truth that we don't particularly want to hear. And let us take the masks off and just be who Jesus called us to be, so that the world can see that we are different. that we are set apart. Okay, I'm going to end off now. So I just bless you. I just bless you at sundown this evening as you watch the sunset. I bless you with the stirrings of excitement as we cross over into the month of Adar. I bless you with everything that these 2 months of Adar are going to bring us, with a double portion, a double portion, a double portion of joy, a double portion of strength, a double portion of supply, a double portion of multiplication. I bless you with a double portion of pregnancy. I bless you with a double portion of enlargement in all the good ways and none of the bad ways. I bless you with this double portion season that we are stepping into. And I bless you to do the work that you need to do to be able to step into this double portion season and receive everything God has for you. So I'm going to leave you with that. I will be thinking of you all and praying for you all as sunset comes this evening and we move into Adar 1. And I will see you on Thursday morning at 7 o'clock again. And we'll see what God has for us to speak about. Love you all. I pray for you all. I bless you all. Mwah. And I'll see you on Thursday. Come on, let's get excited. God is on the move.